Now, every technician out there, every piano tuner out there, if they're tuning at a concert, when the lights go down and the stage lights hit, the concert starts, we're always squirming during these concerts because these concert technicians are usually just wailing on their instruments, just going for it. And we're just waiting for not the octaves to go out, not our temperament to go out, but our unisons to go out. And we're just like, oh, what if they're pounding it and what if it goes out and then they're gonna do a nice soft pass and they're gonna hear it. And then they're gonna pause the concert and just be like, I can't go on. I'm sorry, this piano's so out of tune. And the tuner's sitting right here. Tuner, come and fix this. Bad tuning you did. I know that's probably never happened in the history of piano concerts, but it's still a source where I'm always, even now, 25 years later, I'm always nervous whenever I'm in these sittings because tuning stability, it's a real thing. And will it stand? Will your tunings hold is the big question. And so one of the things that they do within the RPT exams is they do a stress test, and they actually have a little device like this pounding guillotine device. We have one to see if your piano tuning, if your actual unisons are going to hold. And it's a fairly aggressive pound. Now, I know we've talked at great length in multiple, I'm going to turn this fan off just a second. I know we've talked at length about this idea of softer tuning and test blows and all of these things. And truth be told, most of the best tuners that I know, over time, they've tuned quieter. They're not pounding it as hard. But that's not to say that when you're starting out, really making sure that your unisons are going to hold on and pass the stress test. So today, I'm just going to give you an idea of what some of the things that you can do in your home to kind of just start practicing it. And we do have, I ordered it over at the PTG website. I think it was like $80. So if you're really wanting to spend some money and get a cool like paperweight that also doubles as like this crazy finger pounder, this is the pounder that they use. This is, I guess, test issued. And so it is a solid brass tube with a couple of, sure enough, they're just a couple of green punchings, like front rail punchings, glued to the end of it. That's all it is. And I would say it drops about 3 inches. I feel like it weighs about as much as my full tang hammer, by the way. So this is my full tang solid hammer, and it does feel about like that. So it is going to go through, and we're going to go ahead and listen. I hope this comes through, but I was a little shocked about how aggressive this is. Are you ready for it? So what you do is make sure you see it, okay? So that's me just pushing down the notes right here. 3, 2, 1. Woo-hoo-hoo! It's a hefty blow. So if I'm gonna do that just on my own, just kind of trying to duplicate that. It's a very pretty stiff blow. I'll just say that. And so what we want to do is make sure that your tuning is going to hold up. And the first thing that you can do, if you have an ETD of any kind, is just go ahead and isolate one of the 3 strings, your guide note. Okay, that's a good way to start. Now, even if you don't have an ETD right now, I'm going to show you another way of doing it. But let's start with that. So an electronic tuning device. I've got my tried and true, my Rayburn Cyber tuner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tune middle C. And I'm going to tune middle C to this device and make it so it's locked in and right on. And so this is a thing that you can do. Say, hey, okay, I'm going to set one of my notes, one of my strings on that C. What is that? C4. So here we go. so we're just wanting to set our guide note. That's pretty good. And I think it's going to hold. Let's take bets. Who thinks it's going to hold? I don't know. It's right where it needs to be. I'm going to hit it 3 times. Johnny has a mischievous look on his face. He's saying, David, it's not going to hold. Michael has more confidence in me. I can see that. I can read your auras.
Don't put me under the bus.
Here we go. I wonder if there's a way. What I'm going to do, is I'm going to whack it 3 times, and I'm going to hold then this up to you while I play it, and you can see if it held or not. Okay. So right now, you see that? Pretty close, right? Right. Pretty much right on. Ugh. I just have this feeling like as soon as I do it, if it doesn't hold, you're going to be like, well, finding a new mentor, put the warn ads out. Here we go. Okay. Ready? Oh, thank God. So that held. So that's a really simple, easy way of doing it. And again, you guys can kind of practicing that at home. And it's a fairly stiff blow, and see if 3 hard pounds like that, if it'll knock it out. So that would be my first test, is at home. If you have an ETD, start testing your guide note. That would be the far left string. Tune it to that, and then give it 3 stiff blows. Another thing that I used to do is to see how hard. Let's try it. All right, ready? We'll see if that did it. Ready? Oh, I knocked my mute up. Hold on a second. So it was still pretty close. Funny enough, you see that? It went a little sharp. But still, it's within that range. You know, it'll kind of oscillate back and forth. But that would be my first thing to do, is start practicing that. Any questions of that right now before we move on? It's pretty straightforward. What I've noticed in working with technicians over the last however many years is that there's a pattern with their unisons going out of tune. And for whatever reason, I actually kind of know the reason, but it's usually the final string that's out of tune. Usually they'll lock in the first guide note with their ETD pretty well. And usually they'll get that middle string done pretty well, the same. But then that final far right string is usually the culprit in where their unisons are usually not quite right. And so what I would do is go ahead and test yourself and just see, okay, is that my pattern as well? Or no, it's actually my guide note. So just try to figure out where you're landing here, because I guarantee you'll find that one of your notes, the stress test, is one of the 3 strings in the unison is going out. And it's usually, for whatever reason, the far right string. And I would attribute it to the fact that most technicians, as we get further away from that absolute, that guide note, that guide string, that we just kind of lose a little bit. And then they start to I want it to make it perfect. I want it to sound right now. And they're not actually locking it in. I believe that's what's going on. And so we really have to focus our technicians to be like, no, spend the right amount of time, make sure, go back, whatever have you. So that would be my first round of practicing. And all of you all should do this, because it's a simple test to say, hey, I'm going to do the stress test and see how I hold up. And again, it's about the weight of a solid hammer. Again, none of you all with these carbon fiber hammers. I'm trying to think if there's another tool that is as heavy as that. But it's a probably 3 to 5 pounds and a really good solid blow, and see if it holds up to those 3 pounds. The next thing that you can do is, now that it's held out, is go ahead and just do the unison. So go ahead, and even if you don't have an ETD, go ahead and really lock in that far left string and tune the middle string to that. So here we go. I think that's pretty good, but let's stress test it. So again, we just tuned the middle string. So we've tuned 2 strings, so we've tuned a unison. So here we go. So we're just going to use our ears and see if those 2 strings sound pure together, or if we feel that there's a wave. Maybe a little bit on the attack right there. I can hear that slightly. It kind of swells up a bit. So I'm going to go back and try it again. It's so aggressive. I'm sorry. It's even worse in person. That's better. So you're able to test it even just with that. Just say, hey, I'm going to tune the middle string to the far left string. That's it. I'm going to assume that the middle string is in tune. I can do that with any of these notes. And I'm just going to tune the middle string to that far left string and just see if I can lock it in, give it a couple good whacks. If it's holding, great. Let's move on to the final string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute off my far left string, or my guide note. And I'm going to tune that far right string. So, again, using our pounder. So we have now 3 strings out of our unison, all tuned up. In theory, it should hold. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's pretty good. I think that has held pretty well. But you could even see, though, in my tuning it, it's kind of a funny thing because I wasn't pounding it that hard when I'm tuning, right? So you can kind of back it off over time and back up that amount of power on that strike as you get used to moving that pin, and you'll know over time, okay, sure enough, this is set. How does this feel to you? Are you guys nervous about this? Does this make sense? Is it like, yeah, I totally wish I had one of these because I feel like my tunings are rock solid? What do you think?
Well, what I was doing today was actually I didn't know that we were going to be talking about this before I went and tuned that piano this morning. And I got all the way up to the top end and started making my way back down and realized things were starting to go back out of tune. And so then I started doing that. I was like, well, I'll do that test like dun 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 dun, And sure enough, they were starting to go kind of weird. And so I had to take my time to go back, fix a lot of them with that same, extra pressure to get the whole string to ring. Yeah. And then there were 2 particularly that were just really troublesome and did not want to stay. It was like C6 and A5 or something like that. Or C6 and A5. And they refused. And so I spent so many minutes, and everybody kept on walking by because they were setting up for this pageant thing. And everybody kept on walking by and being like, so when are you moving on from that note? And I was just like, when it's right, I guess. Oh no, sorry. So, but what I was wondering was the difference in the direction that the hammer is striking the string, grand versus upright. Does that make a difference?
Doesn't seem to. So they're gonna use the same thing, whether it's a grand or upright, to test it. But the reality is you do use slightly different muscles, so that that's why we really do recommend practice as much on a grand and as an upright, but usually I found that most people are more confident with uprights. Why? Because they're tuning more uprights.
Yeah.
And so they'll get more accustomed to that. I find that tuning grands way easier for me. And actually, I feel like they're more stable, but I did a lot of grands. So I would say that the body motions are some slightly different pivoting and things of that nature, but all of you are probably past the first 2 of the 3 stages of doing a good piano tuning. First being, can you hear it? Can you hear what's supposed to be, and that's why we're practice breaking unisons, making it. So first, can you even hear it? Second, can you get your body to be able to move a tuning pin to where it sounds correct? And then third, which is what we're talking about here, is are you able to make it stable? Those are the 3 things that we want to teach you, is how to hear it, how to move your body to move the pin to make it do it, and then how to make the pin stay. That's the 3 things that we really kind of want to focus in on. And the stress test is a big one. And usually people kind of cringe, whether a 40-year tech, once this thing comes out, everybody kind of starts to, I hope it'll hold. I think it'll hold. Because it is one of those things that whether you're just beginning or 40-year tech, it's a stressful thing to know if it's really going to hold or not. And that's just going to come with time and just going over the pianos, going back over to the pianos that you were at 6 months ago. Hey, it held. Awesome. And you're going to see more and more of that. Then there's other times you're going to get a call back a week later. Hey, the piano you just tuned for me, the unit, something sounds off. And sure enough, you go back and all the unisons are off. So I guarantee you heard it. You knew what it needed to go to. But it just it fell out, and that just takes time and practice. And this is the type of practice you all need to be doing to push yourselves to get these things stable, to get these unisons stable.
David, you were talking about how the 3rd string of the unison tends to be the one that goes out most often. It was interesting that you said that because I was having trouble with the 3rd string today when I was working on the piano at my cousin's house. So it was kind of interesting that you mentioned that as of the 3 strings, that's the one most likely to have some trouble.
Sometimes I'll even have our apprentices or technicians as they're getting started. Hey, when it comes to that far left or far right string, if you're having that hard of a time, go ahead and mute off the far left in the middle and just tune that far right string to the ETD and see how it sounds. So they just kind of get used to that.
So David,
yeah,
does it make a difference since on the trichords, two of those share one string, one overlaps, shares 2 notes. So does it matter which one of those goes out? Does one have a tendency to go out?
That's a really good question, Robert, because you're saying how the string loops down to the hitch pin and then comes back up
to another note.
Yeah, to another note.
So, right.
Yeah, it's one.
So it's like you're actually tuning a half step, 1 string, 2 half steps. Does that matter?
I've only seen that be the case in pianos that are so radically out of tune. You're moving the string so much in like a pitch raise that it seems to alter one or the other. But other than that, that string seems to stretch within that speaking length where that termination point, those termination points are from there and nothing else. Unless you're doing massive pitch corrections.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but it kind of felt that I was having that issue on Monday with the piano that hadn't been tuned since 2010.
You said it was like 40 cents flat?
It was like 30 to 40 cents flat. And it felt like, because I had to go back and, correct stuff. And it felt like, and it wasn't consistent on all 3 strings of the unison. So I'm wondering if I ran into a situation like that potentially.
It could be. You have to imagine, and I tell customers this, and they just kind of their minds like, whoa, mind blown. I say that there's supposed to be about 36,000 pounds of pressure on here. Let's just say 30,000 pounds of pressure. And right now, it's like a half step flat. So that's a lot of pressure that I'm adding to your piano in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 10,000 pounds in 1 hour to your piano. It's just kind of staggering when you think about that. It's just a lot of pressure. And it's going to buckle and kind of move quite a bit during that process, because that it's just so much pressure to just all of a sudden just put on the piano. Victor, you're out in the field, and you've been out in the field, you and Ramses, for a while. Have you noticed a pattern like early on that you needed to go back over, or you noticed your pianos weren't holding as well, or has it always been consistent?
No, it's exactly what you were talking about with the rights. For me, it's always the right string. I would tune the whole piano. I still do sometimes, and I go back and play every note, if every unison was good, and usually the ones 3 or 4 that are out, it's always the right string. I'm just so used to muting off the left side, and that beat's always on that right string.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it's the same thing. I guess it's just that slight oral fatigue from staying on the first note, second, and the third one. You're just trying to get to the next note. So sometimes I will rush it, or you're trying to get it so perfect you just manipulate the pin a little too much. Yeah. So yeah, I would say just trying to get over the fact that you might not get it perfect. So I've been trying to. If that happens, I'll usually just leave it a little sharp, and usually it'll just ease into place, and it seems to be good after that.
The simple way that you check for all that you want to know is if you have your 3 strings in your unison, you're playing the note, and there's a wave somewhere. What I typically do is I will actually first mute off that far right string to see if everything goes pure, and usually it does, because usually it's that far right string that's out. If it doesn't, I'm like, wow, I still hear it. I'll move it over to the far left string. And then if it's still waving, I'm like, shoot, it's the middle string, which means I kind of have to, it's a little bit harder to kind of go back over and do that. But usually it's not the middle string. Oddly enough, it's usually the far right. And then second scenario, it's then the far left, that guide note. So usually it's one of those two, in which case you're able to just move the mute to either of those strings to stop it, and oh wow, it stopped, so it means that is the string that I need to touch up.
I have found though that for, like I was talking about the other day, that we found that Yamahas have a lot of false beats in the higher treble. I feel like it's always the middle string, so that's kind of odd, because I'll tune the guide note, and then that middle one, doing it by ear, and I'm like, golly, what's going on? And I'll mute off the left and right string, and that middle note has beats, and yeah, it always seems to be on the Yamahas.
That is interesting, because I would say that majority, now if I'm just kind of thinking, a lot of the false beats that I've noticed are in that middle string as well.
Yeah,
that is
I don't know what it is. Yeah, it's weird. I remember when I first started off, I was like, God, like, what's wrong with me? Like, am I just, yeah, because you would get to that sound where you can hear both of them are tuned, but there's just those beats, and it's, for some reason, yeah, it's always that middle string kind of on Yamahas.
That is interesting. Robert, by the way, I did do a couple tunings, and I've been working on that. And sure enough, about 5 cents sharp is what I'm pulling it sharp, and then easing it down on average to kind of really set that tuning pin. I know that was a question that you had, how much, but yeah, it wasn't 1 cent. It wasn't 3 cents. It was closer to 5, and even more in some cases today when I was tuning. I was kind of shocked.
I feel better, because I tended to go wildly sharp to get it down, and then I'd zigzag back and forth till I finally locked it in.
Yeah.
I was just curious that. Just one other question on the far right string. Has anyone ever changed up the order? I know you're going left to right, string to string. Some people tune the middle first. Has anyone, well, let's tune the middle and then the right, then the left? I realize that's going to change your pin, but does that make a difference?
I do middle, left, right, typically, as I'm going up. Well, I guess I use the temperament strip a lot, and so I'll just I start in the middle. If I don't have to do a pitch raise, if I'm just doing a regular fine tune, I just do the middle string all the way up, and then I start to pull away the strip on my way back down. Just do right, left, and then just, and it seems like it holds.
So you're doing your guide note with the temperament, and then you're doing the unisons walking down.
Yeah, and just pull out one little bit of the strip at a time. So
yeah,
I was doing it with the mutes for a while, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm spending like an extra half hour with this thing just with the mutes, like moving them around, trying to figure out where I'm lost, and like,
yeah,
forget it.
What we there are some people that like they just kind of swear by the temperament strip and doing that same way, and I think they've gotten used to it, so they're so fast at that.
Mhm.
I've always just because my mentor showed me, he's like, hey, because I kind of started doing the same thing because oral tuner, of course, you just put the temperament strip in, whatever. He's like, just use this. I'm like, what do you mean just this? And so we he just walked it through. And I think that for most people that will cut down time unless you're so used to, like yourself, if you've gotten so fast at that temperament.
Yeah.
Hey, David, what do you stuff the temperament strip in between the notes? What do you push it in with?
Oh, what
David Wilkinson. You use in the temperament strip. What do you push it in with?
I'm hearing that.
David, I think you're breaking up.
I think your mic was really, someone's mic is like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it mine? Maybe mine. Sorry.
It's
David.
Yeah, it's David's mic.
David, your mic is crackly. Can you hear us?
Yeah, mute you, David. Just to confirm. Yeah, it's David's
Try
mic.
disconnecting your mic and plugging it back in, David.
I'll run down and go get what I use. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go get it. I'd love to see that.
One thing that I've seen people use of the mutes that have the wire on it, that has a
Yeah, that's what I
rounded
tried.
end,
Yeah.
that they've done that. They've also.
You're good, David. You sound, yeah.
Is that better?
More crackly. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Jeez, I'm sorry.
I think something got bumped and it was just like a crackly. Oh, it's doing it
happening
again.
again.
What? It's doing it again.
Doing it again.
Are you serious?
Sorry.
Your cable might be going
Interference
bad
on the
there.
cable from something.
That's so loud. Oh my goodness. I can't hear anything.
You're muted right now,
We
David.
can't tell if
Yeah, I
it's-
think
if
you're
it's crackling
muted.
or not.
You're muted, David.
You're muted. He can't hear. Maybe he can hear us though.
So this is what I use. It's literally, it's just like a wooden mute, basically. And on one end it has this. Honestly, it just came in the pack of crap that I bought from this old, like, retired tuner. But I was like, oh, that's actually kind of handy. I'll just use that to shove it in, and it works great. It's just made out of wood. I can use it as a mute. I don't like to, just because it doesn't stay very well. Like, the rubber has a better grip, But I just poke it right in, and it works great. So.
Yeah, somebody recommended those 6-inch little millimeter rulers, those really, really ultra thin ones. I'm like, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then
I guess the other thing you
For
could
those-
try is like the tongue depressors. Wooden tongue depressors would probably work.
Yeah. Yep. So then I also have like these are my other regular mutes that I don't know. I need to get new ones because
Yeah,
they're
you can
not good.
use the backside of that to press the temperament strip.
Yeah. Yep. So I've done this. This is a little bit slipperier, just with it being metal. The wood has a little more texture to it, so I feel like I have more control over the felt when I'm.
Well, not only that, your wooden stick is flat, and that has a rounded edge, so it's a little
Yeah.
less control.
I suppose if you wanted to, you could probably use a flathead screwdriver, but take your chances.
Well, Victor had some interesting, an interesting question, but before I would love to kind of go into that, but it's going to be off topic. Are there any questions more regarding kind of the stress test? Just trying to, locking in your unisons. Again, the unisons are the thing that you all have to really hone in, because that's what you're going to get called back for, is a unison going out. 9 out of 10 times that we're coming back, it's sure enough, it was a unison, fell out of tune.
Well, interestingly enough, David, since we had this on the schedule, I actually pulled out my pace book and started reading up on what they had for, and also for the exam, just so they're when they do the scoring. So here's what they say for the scoring is that tolerances for unison tuning on the RPT tuning exam is plus or minus 0.9 cents or 1 penalty point per 1 cent deviation. So if you go to 0.9, you don't have any penalties. But if you go to 1 cent from the guide note, then you're off. You get 1 penalty point. So
can you make up that point in like some like like in a video game you get extra points or something?
I don't think they did bonus points on the exam, but that's a good idea. I like that.
I tightened the bench before I got to tuning, so that's worth 3 points.
Yeah.
Wait, so are they saying that you explain that one more time? Are they saying that
so essentially if you tune, say like you're shooting for a 440,
yeah,
and you're 1 cent off, it's a penalty point. But if you're 0.9 on either side, there's no penalty. So you have a fairly large window. So if you can tune consistently within 0.5 of either side, you're always going to be good.
But how do they consider that, like when the upper end and you have to stretch, and sometimes it's more than a cent,
Well, that's where whatever they've because they'll write down every single note. They tuned it by the master tuner with 2 other techs, and they write down every single frequency. Here's what we tuned to. Here's what we consider a master tuning for this particular piano. Yeah. And so you have to tune it within that tolerance.
Oh, gotcha.
It's pretty crazy. Like, they do have like a CTE, certified tuning examiner, and then 2 RPTs present at every tuning, which is another reason why we don't have that many piano or registered piano technicians. Is we're actually running out. I just found this out. They're kind of running out of certified piano tuning examiners. So it's just like there's not enough people to even test the people to become these things. So
yeah, the closest I think to me is Minneapolis or something. So
yeah,
6 hours away.
Do they let you when you're tuning? Will they let you do a test blow on your own, or are you like not allowed to do that until they do their own?
No, you can do your you do your own test blows.
Oh,
you go through like when the material that I read, they want you to treat how you tune that piano just like you would do it in day-to-day work. That your technique should be the same for doing the test as what your normal work is.
And I don't know if that's an updated one, Michael, but I think they allow you to use an ETD now with a portion of the tuning. I don't know where. Yeah,
so you by ear have to tune pitch for A440. You got to do that all by ear. Then you create your temperament by ear.
Yep.
That's part 1. Then part 2 is you get to use an ETD for the bass and the high treble. And then the third part is unisons, but it's only unisons in the temperament. Yep. And you have to tune that by ear. So the ETD portion is that you get to tune everything outside the temperament.
Which they don't even check that much, I don't think. I think they're really hyper-focused on the unisons in the mid in that temperament.
Correct. Yeah, they're mainly focused on the temperament and the unisons in the temperament. And it's according to the material that I was reading, it's much more forgiving from a scoring perspective on the bass and the high treble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that as we get further along, we're going to do some more stuff with the tuning, and then I know I keep on promising you this. We are going to get a grand piano here, hopefully very shortly. It's in the works. It's going to go right here. It's going to be perfect, and then we're going to get some special. It's going to be great, and then we can go over some of the stuff that we've been talking about with the tuning and everything with the grand pianos. But if that's all for this tuning, I'm going to go portion. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I also have a funny RPT story for you off the record to tell, and then we can also talk about Victor's question, which is a great question. So, Stacey, are you able to unrecord, or is that?